There's a few poems about breaking the drought in the beginning. I read, that was the first. I'm going to read you the last of the 4 poems. How can we break the drought before we find the source of the Nile? Where do we go to find the source of the Nile? Do we begin at the beginning or the end? At the hidden spring that trickled down a stained rock face and first soaked the dryness away? Or opening like a silk fan at its conclusion through the undulating columns of the Alexandrian library, emptying the history of history into the deep blue sea? If we wish to end the drought and save the ocean for whale and fishermen forlorn as fog, we must take a star map along, what we are fishing for. I used to use the Upanishads to call the wild carp and the Gita to bring them aboard. Gone overboard myself and nearly drowned so many times in the mind stream. When our longing takes the bait, the Nile rolls back up into itself like a yo-yo. There is an implosion, a wave running down the optic nerve, a faint symphony approaching, resonating in the inner ear. When Shaman Buddha fished in Shaman Jesus' sandaled sea and caught the fish of John, the waters of the Nile rose further up the spine. When Jesus walked in Elijah's footsteps across the Red Sea, it split open from habit, and the followers of a single sun emerged on the other side. If the Nile does not begin in the heart, then where? If the Nile does not begin in the midst of mind, then where? Because the Nile begins by remembering something forgotten, it is said its source is hidden. If the beginning did not depend on anything, just started of its own accord, like the first karma whose source is said to be imponderable, did it originate perhaps in the origin of the Big Bang, when the first beginning floated like the crocodile god down the Nile? If its beginning did not depend on anything but grace, it would explain our ultimate homesickness and the rivers running through our forgetfulness and compassion to whet our appetite for more, to break the drought and ride the raft at hand down the length of the Nile. The Nile is our source to our ultimate home. Some people call the Nile God. Some people call the Nile Buddha. Some people call the Nile their best friend, their beloved. The Nile is the beloved. And when we find the beloved in ourselves, we find the source of the Nile. But it isn't hidden. It's just waiting, like a weeping beast, for us to get back to our true home and stop building other houses that you can't live in. There's only one place we can live comfortably, and it's in our heart. We all know it, and that's what's so extraordinary. You don't usually get a group of people that know that their heart is their home and are even willing to listen to poetry to get there. I find that quite remarkable.